What's going on, guys? This is Miasin, and welcome to the OCG Metagame Breakdown number 2 and 3. This one is also very interesting, and I'm also going to be covering it in a different way than I usually do, because I'm also going to be comparing it a lot to the TCG today. And this is definitely a really big breakdown because it's including 176 top-performing decks from 40 tournaments in only what seems to be a week. And usually we don't really have so this is definitely a huge sample size and definitely something that we can take into consideration for our deck building. So yeah, no new sets, so this is purely with the older cards that, the OCG already had, so before Duelist Nexus, obviously. Anyways, before this video starts, make sure you like and subscribe. You already know the drill, my man, and now let's get right into it. Alright, so the best deck right now is purely at 20.5%. This is definitely going to be an upgrade from last time because it was at 14.5, and when it was like the second and third best deck, it was way below that. It was like 8 or 7%, something like that. But now it's definitely kind of dominating in the OCG, so by far the best deck, which is kind of crazy. And the second best deck is Kashtira, which I kind of expected. I actually kind of said that it was going to be, in the top 3 best decks in the OCG post-ban list, because when you think about it, Kashtira is still at full power, in terms of power, but it's not at full consistency, because every single card is limited, pretty much. But you can still do everything that the deck used to do. It's just that you're not going to be doing it as often, and your follow-up game might be just drastically worse, actually. And one thing that seriously shocks me here, I'm kind of disappointed. As you can clearly see, Vanquished Soul is no longer among the best decks, because it used to be the 4th best deck. It used to have a really promising future, and now it's just down there at 2.8. That's kind of unfortunate. Now, another thing that I've noticed purely is almost as good as others. We usually don't really have that, so yeah, the more we advance in a format, the more people understand what the best decks truly are, so they start playing the exact same decks. So diversity is definitely like an illusion, because in reality the only decks that are actually doing well are the top 4. Purely, Kashtira, Adamantipator, and Super Heavy Samurai. Everything else is honestly not doing really good. If you're actually looking at whoever is winning each event, it's usually between Adamantipator and Purely. Sometimes Kashtira, but anyways, for the actual best deck, so obviously, like I said, Purely, and then Kashtira, Adamantipator, Super Heavy Samurai, Labyrinth. This deck actually doesn't really have any good matchups, unfortunately. I guess you can say that Kashtira is actually kind of manageable for Labyrinth, but that's about it. It might actually also steal a few games against Super Heavy Samurai, but I don't think it can really do anything against Adamantipator. Now we've got Tier Elements, which is complete dog shit, so I don't understand why people are still playing it. It literally makes no sense. Branded, this deck is also pretty nerfed in the OCG because they only have 1 Branded Fusion. So if you like Cosmic Cyclone it, then they lose. Dragon Link, this deck is insane in the OCG. It should actually be way above, and there is a reason why I say that, but I'm not allowed to say it. There is something very specifically that nobody knows about Dragon Link that might be... Same thing about Tier Elements, actually. Any deck that mills can do some extremely nasty things that format. But yeah, if you want to know what they can do, you're gonna have to smash the like button, my friend. Anyways, Runic, yeah, that's another really scary deck. I definitely understand why this is good. Math Mech, okay, this is like the lesser good category. Still a decent deck, but it definitely doesn't win against all of these decks. I mean, how the hell is Math Mech outing, the X-Purely Noir? It's just not. Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, anything that would try to out it would lose out to the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast effect, so it's really rough. Vanquished Soul, yeah, nobody is really playing that deck anymore. Exorcister, another letdown, because it was actually at a... it was starting off, pretty good. So as you can see, Exorcister was better, 5.6, and Vanquished Soul was 8.1, and now it's going down. And Adamantipator actually went up, as Tier Elements also went up, the same position as, what's-his-face, Labyrinth. So yeah, definitely a big disappointment, but it is what it is. What else? Blackwing, Scareclaw, Sprite, Tribrigade, Traptrix, Endymion Hero, Magician. Magician should also be a little better, so this is another thing that shocks me. I just think Pendulum decks are really, really good, and I'm not saying this, for, attention, Pen best deck, but I genuinely believe that Pendulums, they have a really insane asset that could definitely catch people off guard. Mathmech, Adignister, Phantom Knight, Rika. Another thing, by the way, about Pendulum is that a lot of people are playing hand traps that don't really do anything against Pendulum, so they can steal games just because people have useless side decks. Anyways, Rika, Teller Knight, Tenny Sword Soul, Tri-Brigade, Lyrilusk, ABC, Plunder Patrol. Okay, this is actually a really good deck, so it should be better. Bestiole, this isn't really much of a deck. It should rather be Dragon Link, featuring Bestiole monsters. Dinosaur, Kashtira, Evil Eye, very interesting. Kashtira, Super Heavy, Samurai, Draco Slayer, what the hell is this abomination? Marincess, Salamangrade, Scareclaw, Manadome, okay, because that's the new name of the deck, and then finally Valiance. Yeah, a lot of people have been saying, you know, Manadome is going to be like insane in the TCG, it's the next Sprite, it's actually better if anything. I couldn't disagree more. I tested the deck, it definitely has some nice potential, but at the current moment, with only one wave of support, unfortunately it's not really good. It's just not good enough. Now, of course, if we start incorporating a lot of bricks in the deck, and assuming that nothing gets hit in the ban list, then yeah, no shit, you can do some huge-ass boards, but at what cost, right? That's always the way I look at it. Yeah, sure, you can do whatever the hell you want, but it's always gonna make your deck worse at the end of the day, not really better. Alright, the best deck right now, of course, purely. And Alvin went second in the 60-player tournament, I believe, and he's playing a different build than what we used to see. So people used to play like a lot more, you know, main deck triple tactic tasking and Herald of the Abyss, and this guy's actually playing more hand traps, if anything. So to Ash, because it's actually a really bad hand trap, all it really does that is broken and negates Maxi. That's about it, but if you want to play like a board breaker version of Purely, you don't even play Ash, you play 0 hand traps, because I can promise you on my life that everybody is going to try to play the triple tactic cards. If you can use tasking, you can actually get access to the card that outs Purely Noir without even triggering the effect of the continuous spell or field spell. So that's definitely really big. And again, if you are wondering why is Santa Claus being played over the Kaiju monsters, it's because Santa Claus can be summoned in defense. So if you can summon one of your weak Xyz monsters, you can jump over the Santa Claus, take damage, and then main phase 2 you make a Zeus, and you break everything. Whereas with the Kaijus, you can't do that. Even with Gamma Steel, which only has 2200 attack, you usually cannot use your Xyz monsters because they have a tendency to be like 1900 attack and lower. So it's just not gonna work, unfortunately. Santa Claus, though, on the other hand, if you can't jump over the Santa Claus before the end phase, your opponent will draw a card. So that's the reason why people used to stay away from cards like Santa Claus, but now it's kind of irrelevant. Oh, another thing, actually, I really have to say that. If you draw multiple Santa Claus, you can Santa Claus your opponent multiple times, whereas if you draw multiple Kaijus, you can't do that. You have to Kaiju your opponent, and then you can either get rid of the Kaiju and then Kaiju again, or summon the Kaiju on your field, which there might be some merit to it, because sometimes you can summon like a level 7 Kaiju and then Synchro Summon, or Xyz Summon with your Kaiju, but that is not the kind of thing that we're going to be seeing super often. So definitely some food for thought for, you know, anyone who's trying to deck build for the TCG. And yeah, the rest of the deck, nothing interesting. I mean, it's always the same thing, you know, 2 field spells. People right now are playing Bridge of Salvation with the Cobalt Eagle, but they're not playing Secret Village of the Spellcasters, and the reason for that is because the field spell for the Purely deck is already really good. Gives you recursion and also the ability to get your Sleepy Memory underneath your Purely Noir, which means that if you have 7 materials, you're not only unaffected by activated effects your opponent, you know, uses, but also you're going to be able to use the effect of Purely Noir and still be unaffected by everything. So that's actually extremely good. So definitely something that you also have to keep in mind. And these Link monsters, I feel like there's one that's missing that's really good. It's the Underworld Goddess, especially when there's a the Dark Charmer in the extra deck. But yeah, Underworld Goddess would definitely be nice. Same thing with IP Masquerena, because you can Masquerena into Azalea and then destroy any card on the field. That's usually what you try to do when you get, you know, D-Barrier to death, because you can't really Xyz Summon, but you can Link Summon. Whereas, you know, right now, this deck list doesn't look like it can really win through Dimensional Barrier, but at the same time, if you're going second against someone who opened like D-Barrier and full combo, you're usually losing anyways. And the side deck has a lot of cards that we used to see in the main deck, and some other cards that people are trying out in the TCG. I'm not a really big fan of Ghost Ogre. I think it's overrated, because Ghost Ogre can be taken care of with one of the memory spell cards. It makes one of your cards indestructible by card effects. I don't think this card's too good. And Joel and Logbird is only good against Super Heavy Samurai based strategies because they search so much and they can't play anything to like counter your Joel, pretty much always playing into it, unless they can randomly Gamma you, but you can obviously hold your Joel after, you know, they control a monster on the field. This should usually completely destroy them. And Dimension Shifter is a double-edged sword, but if you can resolve it against a 60-card deck, it's always going to make you win, and Nibiru is Nibiru, of course. Now, Kashtira, not much to say about this deck, but it's always going to be, you know, up there, because of course the deck, like I said, is still at full power. It's relatively consistent because there's still 3 Birth and 3 Papillas, but I mean, as long as annoying cards like a Rizard exist, I think the deck is always going to be somewhat viable. And yeah, everybody's playing Planet Pathfinder right now to search the 2 field spells. So this is the Scareclaw field spell. It only searches you that Scareclaw monster, and there is no Link 1 Scareclaw, so we're not trying to play like 20 billion Scareclaw monsters in this deck. It's still a Kashtira deck at the end of the day. And this build is definitely interesting because there's no preparations and there's only 1 Ogre. I don't know if I really agree on that. I think I would be playing 3 Ogre and preparations. But at the end of the day, this guy did better than I would with the deck. So I'm not going to be criticizing him too much. He might actually know what he's doing really well. And only 1-dimensional barrier in the side deck because there's a tasking anyway. So if you get a hand shot, then you can get access to it. It's pretty much the equivalent of playing 2 day barriers if you get hit by a hand shot, because even if it's not a monster that can summon itself on turn 0, you can still set the D barrier and it still does whatever you want the card to do, because it's not like you can use it right away, right? It's not like Herald of the Abyss or Triple Tactic Talents off of tasking. And the extra deck is also very sus because there is 3 3-ofs, but the reason for that is because of Extravagance, so that makes sense. And yeah, no Lingaribo because nobody's playing like freaking Ibli and everything. And I want to say in the TCG, sorry, nobody was playing Ibli anyways. So everybody had like 2 Lingaribos in their extra deck and they were never going into them. That was just so useless, honestly. But yeah, whatever. The rest of the main extra inside is not really interesting. It's very standard. And Adamantipator is not a deck that I want to cover too much because it doesn't exist over here in the TCG. And they rely on so many cards that are banned. So Block Dragon, Lawn Mowing, that grass looks greener, as well as Power Tool Braver Dragon, which is not banned, but Smoke Grenade is. And this is the main thing that makes Power Tool Braver Dragon broken. So this is very, very, very reminiscent to the combo that Infernoble used to do. On the end phase or whatever, there were going to be I don't think it's on the end phase. It's during the main phase. I actually honestly forgot. But yeah, maybe on the summon, you can equip, you know, as many or up to 3 equip spells from your deck or grave to the card. When you have that Rod of Silence KS or something, you can negate and destroy any other spell that is equipped to your monster. So you're going to be destroying your Smoke Grenade and then look at your opponent's hand and make him lose a card. So if you can use that, you can remove your opponent's Kaijus and Santa Claus, which makes it so that only hand traps can really deal with this deck. And that's the reason why the Purely deck is actually trying to play these kind of hand traps instead. Because, you know, if you're only playing board breakers, you're not gonna have a good time against this deck. This deck definitely is the kind of deck that will punish you for not hand trapping it. So very terrifying deck. It's by far the most aggressive combo deck in the game right now. And this is insane, man. It's a combo deck that main decks 6 hand traps, which is already unusual. But on top of that, look at everything that it sides. Freaking 3 Kurikawa, 3 tasking, 1 D barrier, and then freaking 8 other hand traps. That is ridiculous. Oh my god. And by the way, this is barely an Adamantipator deck. When you look at it, there's only 2, I think this is the better one. Is it Researcher? And then 1, whatever, the other one. And then 1 Analyzer. That's it. The Block Dragon can search other Earth monsters. I mean, other Earth Rock monsters, obviously, but you should have some decent targets. You know, Gigantis and Tackle Crusader, whatever. It doesn't matter, but yeah, you can do whatever you want. And yes, the Super Heavy Samurai cards, you don't necessarily need them that much, but I'm saying that because you do play a few spell cards, but it's not like you're playing like a pure Super Heavy Samurai deck, so you use them once, and then after that, you can forget about them. You're not even playing that many anyways. It's really like bare minimal, so 3 Bike, it's pretty much only the starters. 3 Bike, 3 Soul Piercer, 3 Prodigy, only 1 Big Bang Key, only 1 Monster Reborn, the Scales if I recall correctly. And then the, whatever guy that equips from a hand and then tributes and special summons from deck. And the most spicy card in this entire deck would be the Nefarious Archfiend. Yeah, Awakening of the Possessed Nefarious Archfiend. This is one of the very unique monsters that can summon itself from the deck as an inherent summon without requiring like any card or effect. It only really requires like its summoning condition to be like a spellcaster and a level 4 or lower Earth monster that you can send from your field to the grave. So you can't send the Pendulum monsters, but you can send pretty much anything else. And then upon summon, I think you can revive back a level 4 Earth from your grave or something. And you can make Power Tool Braver Dragon that way because it is a level 5 monster. So 5 plus 4 equals 9. And then you can Smoke Grenade your opponent and win from there. So yeah, this is an extremely complicated combo, but really, really freaking fun. And then finally, we have Super Heavy Samurai. I think this is the last deck. Yes, sir. So the thing about Super Heavy Samurai is that I think people in the TCG are copying the exact same thing as this, and they think that it's going to be getting them far, but I really disagree. I don't think this is the correct way to play Super Heavy Samurai in the TCG. I'm not gonna go into too many details, but I do believe that if you're going into a tournament with a deck list like this, there is no way people cannot be prepared to beat you. They will absolutely know how your deck works, and they can play a few cards to completely screw you over. This is basically almost a Sekka's Light deck. It loses to the exact same kind of things. You literally cannot deal with back row post game 1, because there's pretty much nothing outside of very specific cards and extra deck cards that can even deal with back row in the first place. So if you're, getting hit by certain floodgates that completely screw you over, it is what it is. So that's the thing that I don't really like. Now, if you go first with this deck, you should be winning pretty much every single one of your games. And if you're going second against a deck that loses to hand traps and you draw a bunch of hand traps, you should be fine. And another cool thing about this deck is that it is one of the only decks that can play, Gamma and Driver with literally no drawback, because Driver can be pendulum summoned. So it is what it is if you draw it. It's not the end of the world. It really doesn't suck that much, actually. And yeah, of course, Humongous, because it is an earth monster, and it is also searchable by... sorry, it's not that it's searchable. I mean, it is technically... hold on. No, it's not searchable. It has way too much attack. I was gonna say Retaliating Sea. That's not true. Max C is searchable by Retaliating Sea. But Humongous can be pendulum summoned as well, because it is not level 8. So that's kind of irrelevant, but it's funny. And you can also search Jizukiru off of Clifford Genius, but why would you do that when you can just search other cards like Spell Cancel and stuff like that? And going first, you can search Jizukiru for your follow-up play in case your opponent makes like an Experience Noir through all of your board, but I don't think that's necessarily a good idea, because once you Jizukiru, your opponent can like recycle back 3 cards with the continuous spell and then summon a monster, get another search, and then you really have to OTK. So you might as well just make like a gigantic board and not really care too much about your follow-up, because if your opponent breaks your board by playing Purely, you're completely screwed anyways, so it really doesn't matter. And Purely can break boards if you use your negates incorrectly, because every single card literally does the same thing, and pretty much nothing is once per turn. And if you're sitting on a card like Spell Canceller and you get hit by Santa Claus, you're not going to be really happy. So, that's the reason why people are doing lingering things like Artifact Scythe Turbo. But in the TCG, we do not have that. So I don't think there's anything super unfair that Super Heavy Samurai can really do in the TCG outside of potentially, I don't know, FTKing you. If you can do that, then you don't have to worry about getting Kaiju'd. So I think that might be like a better strategy. But again, it's another story for another day. By the way, I find it really interesting to see that a Super Heavy Samurai deck is playing Dimension Shifter, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, worst case, you pendulum summon it and you make I don't know, a Synchro play because it's level 6 and you play a bunch of level 2 tuners. So you can make Assault, Synchro, Stardust, and then Revive back, and then make Baron, which is extremely funny. Or another thing that you can do is actually use it against this deck. They go Lawn Mowing, you go Chain Shifter, and then they banish 20 cards from their deck. They're usually going to be losing the game when that happens. And then going second, you just make Baguska going like in defense pass. You don't even have to do that much. So yeah, even though your deck kind of loses to Shifter, it only loses to Shifter if you're really playing into it. But usually decks that play Shifter lose to Baguska. So that's the reason why this card is pretty much always the main priority when you have this card. And that's what Tearlaments used to do, actually. Baguska Turbo when they played against Flunderies, whether or not they were getting shifted. Because it also made you play under Nibiru sometimes if you just summon Baguska in 3 summons and that's it. But yeah, in conclusion, Purely and Kashtira are still the best deck. We also have Adamantipator, Super Heavy Samurai, as well as Labyrinth and Tearlaments branded in Dragon Link and Runic that are not too bad. Well, I mean, these decks are like particularly good, and then these decks are just like less good but still very decent. Yeah, and the difference between them is really not that big, as you can see. 11, 11, 10, 10, 9, 9, and 8. Yeah, the difference between the first out of these and then the last one is only like 3 positions, so it's really not that big. On the other hand, the difference between the first and the second best deck is double. So it definitely speaks volume on how much better Purely is compared to everything else. So that's something that you can also use to your advantage if you know that everybody's going to be playing a specific deck. You really build to beat just it, but at the same time you can start losing to other decks. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a strategy game that, you know, has everything to do with concessions, making sacrifices, and knowing what accept defeat against and what to try to beat is probably the main ingredient to winning in this game. That's pretty much all I have to say for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.